Over the past decade or so, Bethesda has really developed this reputation as being a company that produces games with bugs. Sometimes a lot of bugs, sometimes like a moderate amount of bugs, but they're almost always there, and specifically when you look at the Bethesda Game Studios library of games. First around launch with some bugs lingering, but otherwise many getting patched out by modders or Bethesda themselves. It's effectively a staple of their product at this point, and many of us have grown to just get used to it. But in this video, I wanted to take a look back at some of the worst bugs Bethesda ever had with all of their various games. Now in this, of course, we're going to have quite a bit in the way of Fallout 76 bugs, specifically because there wasn't that leaning on modders. Even if Bethesda was slow to fix things in the past, oftentimes a mod would pop up almost immediately. With Fallout 76, that isn't really an option, and as such, those bugs have become much worse and exaggerated. But even outside of that, we're going to look at some other bugs facing consoles and just general ones that are both really bad and some are just kind of funny. So in this video, I want to go over what I view as the top Bethesda bugs in no particular order across many of their games. And you can find links to all of the footage featured throughout this video in the description down below. One of the first ones I wanted to bring up that I feel like a lot of people have kind of forgotten about because so much has followed it is the Fallout 76 beta self-deleting bug. This was bad. At this point, Fallout 76 was already somewhat controversial. The change to multiplayer, the beta with limited time sessions, and even just a beta so close to release, and of course the timed exclusivity with the beta starting on Xbox One. But in the first night of this beta opening up for PS4 and PC players, it encountered a problem, as just hours before the beta was set to go live at 7 PM, it deleted itself. The entire 47GB download was removed for PC players, and they would have to re-download the entire game. And this was specifically close to the launch time, to when you would actually get to play. It seemed like it was something to do with unlocking the files or some kind of security check allowing people to actually access the game. And for most betas, this would be pretty catastrophic, definitely not a good look, but not necessarily the end of the world. What made it so much worse for Fallout 76's beta is it was only up for a limited amount of time. There was only a 4-hour window you could even play, so if your internet wasn't fast enough, and you would need a pretty quick internet regardless to get those 47GB downloaded, you couldn't even play that night and in turn couldn't even play for the next couple of days. And when trying to do first impressions on your brand new multiplayer game, this is not how you want to kick things off. You'd have to imagine for Bethesda, this was pretty chaotic internally, and their first tweet out, which has now been deleted, mentions that players should not click any buttons on the client for the time being. But of course, we all know Fallout 76 has had its fair share of problems, and we'll hear about several more of them in this video. Although one other release for Bethesda that was just really bad was actually for Fallout 3, specifically the Pit DLC on Xbox 360. So although the DLC on PC and PS3 was mostly fine, outside of just the usual bugs, on Xbox 360 there was some very weird error. It seems like that there was some translation error either when downloading the file from the Microsoft Store or uploading it to the Microsoft Store, and as such, basically people had a corrupted DLC file. So you would see crazy and messed up textures, but one of the biggest parts was many NPCs were now just replaced with red question marks. Naturally, meaning you literally couldn't play it because you can't talk to the NPC to progress a certain quest. And this extended to many aspects all throughout the deal. It was large in part just a mess and unplayable on release. So you would have spent this money all excited to play the DLC, download it, and you get this. Fortunately with this one, although quite a big blunder by Bethesda, it was actually patched in just 24 hours. Alright, so we got a PC exclusive bug, we have an Xbox 360 exclusive bug. How about now we talk about the absolute disaster that was PS3's edition of Skyrim on release and even after. One of the big differences with the past two issues or bugs I talked about was that Bethesda was actually pretty quick to address them. Both of them actually being addressed within 24 hours. But when it comes to Skyrim on PS3, we saw basically a game-breaking bug that persisted for months. In effect, it seems like what happened was, due to some of the architecture used by the PS3 platform, things were just overall a bit less stable, but even further, as your save game file size increased, aka you just played the game, explored new areas, got new items, met new NPCs, the game would get persistently laggier. And even further, all throughout, autosaves or just saves in general would cause additional lag for the game overall. And this wasn't subtle, as you're seeing in the background, very quickly this could create an unplayable state for this game. It's not like you had to dump 100 hours to get this effect, you could get it pretty early on. Some of the potential fixes were doing things like turning off autosave in general and just using manual saves all throughout, but very often, it's still a Bethesda game and it still has those regular or typical crashing issues. And all of this is very game breaking, but again, what made this one so much worse is the patch that actually drastically improved things didn't come for 3 months. So if you bought Skyrim on release in November, you couldn't have had a very playable experience until all the way in February. And even still, reading updates around this in 2015, Skyrim on PS3 is still an unstable experience compared to other consoles, which naturally is a huge portion of the market, especially back in 2011, and was probably a pretty big hit on Skyrim overall and caused a lot of concern for Bethesda. Although funny enough, this actually wasn't Bethesda's first interaction with a save-based glitch, causing problems throughout the game overall. As all the way back with Oblivion, there was actually something known as the glitch of doom. Very similar to the issue you had with Skyrim. Basically, what this meant was, after spending a certain amount of hours in a save game and getting that save game to a certain size, you would find a very similar result in Oblivion as to what you had in Skyrim. Things would gradually start slowing down, certain issues would pop up, and just overall the game stopped making as much sense. Now, the horrifying aspect about this when it comes to Oblivion is it specifically affects save games with high amounts of hours, seemingly somewhere around the 300 to 500 hour mark, which of course is a lot, and many users never even hit that mark. But for those who did, you would gradually start to see the symptoms of this glitch pop up, and there was no fix. You would have just dumped 300-400 hours into a save game and slowly started to see it die to the point where it was basically unplayable. And to me, it just seems a little bit worse, because you imagine there were definitely some players going for a full-on completionist run, or just enjoying that save for many hours, probably across several years, that eventually just lost it. That would definitely make me rage quit the game. So in that, we took a bit of a detour away from Fallout 76, but it's probably right time that we actually revisit it and some of the other major problems this game has faced. And actually, one of the worst, or at least one of the worst for me, was the unlimited carry weight exploit that exists in Fallout 76. So basically, on release and several months thereafter, in Fallout 76, if you had any item with the pocketed bonus on it, if you just spammed equipping and de-equipping that, it would gradually increase your carry weight to unlimited degrees. So you could eventually achieve massive carry weight numbers, which at the time was immensely useful. On release, there was only 400 stash weight, and with the focus on collecting junk, building up your camp, or just having a ton of cool new items that you're finding all throughout Appalachia, people didn't have enough storage space, and this was seen as a good solution to that, although of course being an exploit. So at its core, that's not a huge problem, but one of the worst parts of this, and one of the worst parts of many of the bugs you could find throughout Fallout 76, is this literally was a bug that popped up originally with Fallout 4. It was a bug that was known about throughout all of Fallout 4, was addressed by certain mods, and never officially fixed by Bethesda. So I guess as they went off to create Fallout 76, they just never picked up on it, as 3 years later it just popped up in that game also. And this, of course, again, wasn't the only one. There's a lot of power armor-based glitches, whether it was glitching through walls or even just that funny power armor body glitch, also carried over from Fallout 4. But even further, early on with Fallout 76, particularly in late 2018 and early 2019, server stability was a major concern. There was a lot of issues around this. And what was viewed as one of the leading factors was actually dupers having insanely large carry weights. Now, some of them were just over encumbered all the time. Several others were actually abusing this exploit to allow themselves to actually walk around with a ton of items. And seemingly, some people having way too many items on their character would actually cause significant lag for servers, or even just to be around them. So even just going near some of those players with a ton of items they shouldn't be able to hold, your own FPS would go down. And although this definitely persisted past the unlimited carry weight exploit, this is one of those problems that really caused significant damage to this game. It made it just very frustrating to play, until Bethesda eventually just made it so you could only have so many items in your inventory regardless of your carry weight. Although fortunately now this has all been addressed and is no longer a major issue. Now they're different issues. Which, speaking of, I would say one of the other major problems or bugs to pop up with Fallout 76 was actually around Vault 94. This is another one that requires a little bit of unpacking, as Vault 94 itself was mostly okay. It isn't a bug. If you're not familiar with Fallout 76, one of the major problems is a lack of a good endgame. You could do things like fight the Scorched Beast Queen or some of the other legendary grinds, but people were really clamoring for something more permanent, a better solution such as a legitimate dungeon. Something Bethesda mentioned would be coming, but several of the past dungeons didn't really deliver. But with the announcement of Vault 94 being true high-level vault dungeon raids, people got excited that this could be a solution to that problem. Except when Vault 94 released, you saw just how bad some aspects of this game could be. These vault raids were played with immense lag, to the point where sometimes it would take 30 seconds to load a terminal. And mind you, to get some of the good rewards from this, you had to do it under a time limit. And although lag would be frustrating before, it never actually had as large of an impact as it did in Vault 94. So if you wanted some of those high-level rewards, you had to basically go through all these artificial handicaps to actually get them just due to server instability. But even further, at the time, Fallout 76 had several bugs, such as when you would exit power armor, you would fall through the floor and just be stuck there, or miscellaneous crashing issues where you'd be crashed to desktop or disconnected from your server. Frustrating, but a simple server reconnect or relaunch of the game would address that. Except in Vault 94, you can't rejoin the vault after disconnecting. And as such, many people found an immense amount of frustration from this, as you might put in 30 minutes to an hour into this vault only to have one of your team members, which is probably vital because this wasn't easy, fall through the floor and you'd basically have to throw away the entire run or try and do it a man down. Vault 94 itself wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it really highlighted some of the lingering issues with this game and made them way more impactful. And I think this ended up having a massive impact on the reception of the Vault, as now Bethesda's actually cutting it with the release of Wastelanders. So we'll seemingly just have another unused Vault in the game. But then for one final one, we do have Fallout 76 re-adding bugs, and just overall Bethesda's version control issues when it comes to this particular game. Naturally, as we've just kind of discovered, Fallout 76 has had a plethora of bugs all throughout its history, but now with a year behind us, Bethesda has addressed many of these. Except it seems like throughout the halfway point of 2019, Bethesda really started to have a problem where they would address certain bugs and then in subsequent updates actually either create new bugs or re-add previously patched bugs back into the game. Most of the time, this was more of a nuisance than anything. It often wasn't a game-breaking bug, just a frustrating one. But just the fact that alone that for a lot of the bugs that ended up getting patched, you weren't sure how long they would stay patched for was just bad. Bethesda seemed for a while there to really struggle with version control over Fallout 76, that seeming to be one of the main causes for this problem. And even hurt themselves, as at several points they leaked fairly major DLC details, like the fact that the game was getting a Battle Royale mode. Although over the past 6 months or so, it seems like they've gotten way better with this. Not too many bugs have been re-added, and the version control issue seems to be large in part under control. Although, in fairness, over those past 6 months, we've only seen a sparse amount of updates or new content. But either way, that is a look at some of the major bugs to face Bethesda. Technically, this video was a lie. I said 5 bugs, but I went a little bit over. A few of them were more minor towards the end there with Fallout 76, but hopefully you found this entertaining. It definitely gives you an insight as to how Bethesda developed the reputation that they have. They release buggy games. It's basically just a fact at this point, and it's not like it's something that really has been getting better, as I would argue the release of 76 was probably one of the worst releases they've had thus far. But hopefully with Wastelanders and even with Starfield, they'll learn from past mistakes and improve. Release bug-free content on day one, not actually relying on the community or taking months or even a year to actually get some of those bugs fixed. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you found this video informative. But with that, I do hope to see you all next time. Later.